May 22, 2010. It was supposed to be a happy homecoming for many. Air India Express Flight 812, a routine international route from Dubai to Mangalore, was nearing its final descent. On board were 160 passengers and 6 crew members, mostly Indian expatriates returning from the Gulf. But what happened in the final minutes of this flight would become one of India's worst aviation disasters. A devastating crash that killed 158 people and left only 8 survivors. In this video, we take a deep look into the chain of misjudgments, warnings ignored, and tragic errors that led to the crash of Flight 812. Air India Express is a low-cost subsidiary of Air India, primarily operating routes between India and the Middle East. Flight 812 was operated using a Boeing 737-800, tail number VT-AXV. The aircraft was only 2 years old, modern, reliable, and well-maintained. On this flight, the captain was 55-year-old Serbian national Zlatko Glusica, with over 10,000 hours of flying experience. The first officer was Indian pilot H.S. Ahluwalia, younger but trained and qualified. The flight took off from Dubai at 1:06 a.m. local time and was scheduled to land in Mangalore at 6:05 a.m. IST. The weather was generally clear, but the Mangalore airport, a tabletop runway surrounded by deep valleys, required absolute precision during landing. This airport is notorious among pilots. Any mistake on approach or landing could leave almost no margin for error. As Flight 812 neared Mangalore, air traffic control cleared them for an instrument landing system approach to runway 24. The aircraft was configured for landing. But as the plane descended, something troubling became evident. It was too high and too fast. Standard procedure required a go-around in such cases, but Captain Glusica chose to proceed. In the cockpit, the Ground Proximity Warning System, GPWS, began shouting alerts. Sink rate, pull up, terrain. The first officer repeatedly suggested a go-around, concerned by the unstable approach. But the captain ignored him. At 6:04 a.m., the aircraft touched down. But it was 4,638 feet beyond the runway threshold. On an 8,000-foot tabletop runway, this left less than half the runway for braking. The Boeing 737 struggled to decelerate. The captain attempted a late go-around, but by then it was too late. The plane careened off the runway, overshooting the edge at high speed. Beyond the runway was a deep gorge. The aircraft plunged into the ravine, breaking into pieces and bursting into flames. The devastation was immediate. 158 lives were lost in seconds. Only 8 people survived, many with critical burns and injuries. Local villagers and airport staff were first on the scene. They described scenes of horror. Bodies trapped in twisted metal, fire engulfing the wreckage. Rescue teams struggled to access the crash site due to the terrain. Fire and smoke made conditions even worse. In the hours that followed, families gathered at the airport in anguish, hoping for news. For many, it never came. Among the victims were children, newlyweds, entire families. The loss rippled across communities both in India and the Middle East. The Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, launched an immediate investigation. The cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder were recovered. The findings were disturbing. Despite clear warnings and repeated suggestions from the co-pilot, the captain continued the unstable approach. The final report concluded human error was the primary cause. Captain Glusica was suffering from sleep inertia, a condition caused by abrupt awakening from deep sleep, leading to reduced alertness. Investigators found that he had likely been asleep for over 90 minutes before the approach. When he woke up, his decision-making was impaired. The co-pilot, although aware of the danger, lacked the authority and confidence to overrule his superior. The crash of Flight 812 raised serious questions about cockpit resource management, pilot fatigue, and the safety of tabletop runways. It prompted regulatory changes, enhanced training for go-around protocols, better fatigue monitoring, and stricter requirements for approaches into challenging airports. Air India Express improved its internal safety culture. New SOPs were introduced, and co-pilots were empowered to speak up more assertively. For the families of the victims, the pain remains. Memorials have been built in Mangalore to honor those lost. The story of Air India Express Flight 812 is one of warning, a lesson in the dangers of complacency and poor judgment in high-risk environments. A safe aircraft, a clear runway. Yet in the end, a disaster that could have been avoided. Let this tragedy remind us, in aviation, every decision counts. To the memory of those who lost their lives on that fateful morning, we remember you.